Okay, now we'll look at the array filter function, which is a built-in function with PHP, and it allows us to take an array and to basically produce another array based upon the criteria we provided. So as an example, we might want to provide an array that has numbers above or below a certain amount, whatever the case might be. But array filter is one of those very useful functions, and I personally find myself reaching for it every day. So let's start out here. And we'll start with a basic array. So we'll create that here. And we're not going to open up a web browser or anything like that. We're going to do everything in the terminal to show you how that all works. And our array is going to look like this. So just a very simple set of numbers here. Now, what we do now, because the array filter function returns a new array, we do need to assign it somehow. So we'll call this array filtered array. And we'll make that equal to array filter. Now, array filter accepts two mandatory parameters and then a third optional parameter to adjust the mode. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But right now, we're basically, as a default, just returning the value and making comparisons that way. So the first parameter we need to pass through here is the array. And the second is going to be a callback function. So in this case, we're going to create an anonymous callback function. And there's two ways to go about this. So I'll show you the one way and then we'll do another one. So in this case, I basically just want to return an array of items that are, we'll say, greater than 4. So to do that here, we would go, well, first of all, we need to pass the actual item within that array. So that's going to be, as it loops through the array, that's going to be, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what this is essentially going to be. So we want to return this in the new array if it's greater than 4. All right. Now we'll print that out. And we'll take a look at that in our terminal. So PHP and you can see we return an array of basically only numbers past 4 or greater than 4. So we're just returning the last 5 numbers. This represents the index. If we're dealing with a key value pair array, then it's not going to spit out the index, but it'll spit out what the key is for us in this case. Some things to note in here as we're going through, and it's making these comparisons within the array. It can be a string as a number. Okay, so this will still return as 7. So you can see that still returns for us. This one does not, of course, because that doesn't count. And you can do other things too, like we could say, for example, we could say 4 or 44. We'll save that and we'll run that again. Okay, so it's going to compare the first number to see if that's the case of the string. We'll do this. Okay, and we can see it returns 4 or 44. So this is one of those little finicky things. If you are trying to pass through a string, your first number is, if it contains a number and it's the first one in there, then of course it's going to compare that. And as you can see here, we actually start with letters, so it's not going to compare that. So that's one thing you'll want to look out for as well in there. Okay. And just to demonstrate this further, we'll say this is a string. And we'll see if that returns, which it won't, because of course it's only comparing or looking for numbers. And you could do anything in here. You could create a far more complex callback function to do that. Now, the other way to pass our argument through here, knowing that we are going to receive each instance of the value of that iteration in here, we can do some other things with this. So we could actually create a function that could then be used. So we'll give this function a name, of course, and this one will be, we'll say greater than 4. Okay, oops. So this is important to know, like for when we're building out, we want to do something clean, nice, clean, organized code. We could and reusable as well. So that's why you might want to break this out instead. But basically, this will return a Boolean, of true or false. And now all we have to replace this with is a string with the function's name. And if we refresh and we run that again, we can see it runs the exact same as it would. Okay. Other things we could do in here, for example, is we could say, function is an int, and we might want to return is int, and we'll say item in here, and we'll say is an int instead. What are we missing here? Okay, we didn't throw an error, so that's great. Now you might notice this here, of course, because the function itself is trying to verify, is it actually an integer as a number? So this here would be a string, this would be a string as well, technically, and then this would be a string. So it's not going to return as part of our new list. All right. One other thing you might want to note here is, as it creates the filtered array, it also carries over their respective indexes. So there is a way that you can actually go in and remove the indexes there, because you don't actually, if you kind of want to rebase it. And one way to do that would be, we can return array values. We can use this method, and we'll just wrap it in there, like so. Okay. Now you can see here everything's been re-indexed. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as we expected. For now, I'll leave this out, but you have that option. Now the other use case, which I end up using far more often, because I end up pulling things out of a database and putting them into their own classes, is dealing with arrays of objects or collections. So in here, what we'll do is I'll show you how to filter through an array that carries a bunch of objects. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll actually create our object here first, or our class in this case. It's going to be a person, and it'll hold some details like we'll have a public property, so basically a property that's accessible from outside of the class. Okay. And we're just going to have basically 4 properties in here. We'll put in the age, and we'll put in the gender. All right. Now we're going to pass it some values initially when we create it. So we'll say public function. We have to use the constructor function in here. And it's going to accept first name. Now actually, one of the latest features with PHP 8 allows us to make the automatic assignment and creation of properties. In this case, I won't get into that. I'll take care of that in another video and show you what that actually looks like. But for now, we'll do this the old-fashioned way, the PHP 7 way. So using the this keyword, we will assign first name. All right. Okay. So now we've assigned those, which is great. And for now, yeah, we'll leave it as such because we'll print out basically what the property values are for this. So what we need to do is now we need to actually create this array. We'll call this a person's array. And that's going to equal an empty array here. And we'll just new up a new version of this. And this is where we're going to pass our parameters in here for the constructor. So in this case, we'll pass through my name. Okay. Oops. We'll say age. Sorry, not age. We'll say 35, and we'll say the gender is male. Okay. So I'm going to do, we'll do another one in here. This one will be Taylor Johnson, and Taylor will be 25, and Taylor can also be a woman's name, so we'll say female. We'll say Janice, and we'll say Smith, and Janice Smith is going to be 55, and again, she's going to be female, and we'll say we'll say another female name. We'll say Anne Jameson. And Anne Jameson is going to be 65 years old and female. Okay, great. So we have our array of new items in here. We could print this out so you can see what that actually looks like. Make sure that everything's been put in there correctly. Oops. And all right. Oops. Person. We need persons. Great. And you can see it's sending all those out there. Well, it should. All right, but it's actually not because, okay, because we haven't done that correctly. Okay, let's try this one more time. Perfect. Okay, so we're returning all the objects that we should be as properly as we should be. Okay, so now we can actually take care of filtering out this array. So we might just want to say, we'll say persons male, and this one will be array, again, array filter, and we'll actually create the callback up top instead, but for now we'll say persons array. And let me just here before I go much further, I'm going to, oh actually we already got rid of all that, so that's good. So now we want to say filter, no, we'll say is male. Is male is the actual function in there. And then we'll say persons male. Okay. Now, before I go much further, I don't know what's going on with the red here, just probably conflict with my linter. But at any rate, let's create a function here to actually filter that. So we'll say function is male, and we're going to retrieve the value in here. It's another option, value instead of item. And then we'll say return value. This is returning the object to us, so now we have access to its properties by using our object notation. And we'll say gender is going to equal male. Okay. So now all that we should return is basically the, actually I should have done, I'll do male in here too. We're going to return 2, so basically be the first 2 that we should be returning. So let's do that. Undefined variable persons male. Okay, let's try this again. Perfect. So we only return the first 2, right? So person object Tyson, person object Taylor, so on and so forth. Another thing we might want to do is we could say function greater than what would be, we'll say greater than 35. Okay, so we got our value, and again in here we just basically return, okay, value age is greater than 35, so we should only be returning 2 results in this case, but we'll say greater than 35. So we'll say persons +35. Okay, we'll go down, we'll run this again, and you can see we return 55 here, 65 for Janice. Now we also have 2 names in here that start with the letter J for the last name. We'll do this as our last example, and then we'll actually take a look at modes. So again, function in here will say last name starts with J. And we'll return the value in here. And we'll say return value gender, sorry, not gender, last underscore name. We'll get the 0 index of that. And we'll say that's equal to the letter J. And if that's the case, then we're in good shape. I'm going to copy that there, put that over here. We'll say person's last name J. All right, perfect. So again, here you can see Johnson and Jameson. So you can imagine going through much larger sets, much larger collections, and being able to filter down as you see fit using array filter. Very powerful function for us to actually use. Now we also have the option of dealing with multiple modes. So we could actually return, just say instead of the value of that array, we could return the name of the key. So thus far we've only dealt with we haven't been dealing with name key value pairs. We've just been dealing with the indexed individual values of the array. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at that mode. And the example we'll look at there with that particular mode is, say, for example, items in a cart. So we'll name the item and we'll put the value next to them there. So we'll say cart. That'll be an array like this. And we'll say orange juice will be one example. We'll say 5 eggs. Okay, perfect. So I copied and pasted it there. And now all we have to do is filter through. So we could do some things in here, like we could say, okay, you know, return items, return the items that have more than three items. Or in this case, we'll actually say let's say more than 5 items. So we can create a function to do that in here, or we'll just use an anonymous function in this situation. And we'll just call this one filtered cart for now. And that'll be array underscore filter. And I'll show you how we actually change up our mode to enable us to actually use both our key and the value if we want to. So in here we'll do function. Okay, key value. Let's close that end of line off here. And here is where we actually insert our mode at the end, and that's going to be array underscore filter underscore use underscore both. We'll come back here, we'll fix this up so we don't run into any problems. Okay, great. Now filter cart array filter. Okay, so now we just need to determine, we only want to return if if the value, and actually it's like this, actually it's reverse. It's value and then key in there. So if the value is greater than 5, then we want to return it as part of our filtered cart. So let's go ahead and we'll print that out so you can see what that actually looks like. Okay. And we'll go ahead and we'll run that again as well. So that's great. So we're left with apples, chips, and soda. Another option we could go with is we could change our mode and we could just use the key, or we could do both. So in this case, let's say, okay, it has to be over 5 and it can't contain soda, for example, and not equal to soda. So now here we have soda as 6. We should only return apples and chips, basically, with this particular filter. So, sorry, not or, but we actually want to do and to make that happen. Okay, perfect. So all we end up returning is apples and chips because it's over 7, and it's not soda in this case. Now the other option in here is maybe we just don't want to return array filter use key. Okay, so now instead of value and key, we're only going to use key in this situation. And we might want to do something maybe a little bit more complicated. So we could say not in array, and let's see here. Okay, we'll pass through our specific key, and then this will contain another array where we'll basically filter out values we don't want. So in this case, we don't want to return eggs, and we don't want to return chips, and we don't want to return soda. Okay. So basically, if it's not in the array, so basically if this key matches any of these, it will not return the value. Okay, and we're just using key to get this particular thing done. So let's return this here. So eggs, chips, and soda, you can see all we're left with is orange juice, apples, and oranges. So very flexible. And again, you can use array filter, use key. You can use array filter, use both key and value. Remember, value comes first before key. And then if you just leave it blank, all it's going to return, all it's going to allow you access to in your anonymous or callback function is just the value itself. All right, let me know if you have any questions.